Hello and welcome back to the channel. I've got a banger video for you guys today. Originally this was going to be a Q&A kind of answering the most common questions about Airbnb arbitrage, but I've decided to actually just focus on one question. Guys, I get this question all the time, and the reason I'm focusing on it today is because it's probably the stupidest question that I get, okay? The question is, can I start an Airbnb arbitrage with zero money? And guys, the question itself is not stupid, but if it's coming from somebody that has no money, then it is completely silly. You guys, you're living in fantasy land. It's a complete make-a-wish project that you have here for yourself, okay? Utter waste of time. If you have zero money, that means you don't even know how to make money from somebody else, let alone make money for yourself. Get a job, guys. That's my only advice that I can give to anybody who has zero money. And if you're watching this video right now and you have no money, click off. Like, go get a job, go make some money, save a little bit, and then come back when you have something to invest. And the reason I say that, guys, is because there are going to be certain hurdles that appear in any business, okay? Anything. It could be that you get an Airbnb and, you need a washing machine and a washer dryer to start because you're just not going to perform if you don't have it, or you need some minor repairs done to the property. The landlord's not going to cover it. The first hurdle that comes up for you is going to completely break you because you have nothing to invest. And I will talk about in this video the options to not use your own money to start with Airbnb, but I don't advise that if you are dead broke, guys. If you're broke, get a job. You're not starting a business. Just do something for a little bit and just focus your time, energy into that. Make a little bit of money, even develop a skill. If you want to get a job as a real estate agent. Get to know real estate a little bit, or anything to do with property sales or property letting, so that you understand the industry and you're actually going into it with a skill and then some money behind you. Now that we've got that out of the way, we can actually talk about how could you start an Airbnb? How could you start an Airbnb business if you have your own cash reserves and you want to leverage, say, somebody else's money, or you're already running as an Airbnb, but you don't want to keep reinvesting your cash flow. You want to do it in a way that's going to not cost you as much capital up front. Guys, there is a way to do this, and that is leveraging 0% interest credit cards. Cards like the Amex Blue Business Card, where you get 12 months 0% interest on the credit that you take. And obviously the line of credit that you're actually qualifying for is going to be based totally on your individual circumstances and your credit score, but there are ways to ensure that you get the highest line of credit. We're not going to dive into all that today, but there are techniques that you can use to get higher lines of credit to start with. Now, if you get those lines of credit, there are certain properties that will actually allow you to pay for your rent and pay for your deposit with the credit card. And that's the likes of luxury apartments, sort of higher end apartment buildings where you're paying for everything in-house. It's not just individual landlords, it's actually the property building that's renting out to you. And a lot of the time, they will accept credit cards for that. Then you can get on to furnishing the property, where you can also obviously leverage your credit card and your credit line to spend the money on that investment. That way, when your Airbnb is running profitably, you can reinvest that money into paying off your credit card. Essentially, you're putting none of your own money down up front. Fairly simple, guys. If you are starting an Airbnb arbitrage and you have a little bit of money, okay, say you have, 2K to invest in this business. Maybe you have other savings, maybe you own your own car, you're not broke, but you want to invest, say, 2K to start with. Well, then I advise that you find a city, ideally the one that you live in, and you find a property that's for rent in a decent neighborhood, guys. Massively important. You don't want a neighborhood where the neighbor's a drug dealer and he's going to get you 1-star, 0-star reviews, left and right because of something that you can't control. So make sure the neighborhood's decent, really vet the property, run the numbers on AirDNA, and say the property is $800 a month. You got your first month's rent and you've got your deposit, which is usually 1 month. You're in for $1,600, guys. Then go ahead and take out those lines of credit to get the property completely furnished. You're going to have to pay your electric, you're going to have to pay your water, your utilities, all those types of costs, your Wi-Fi, etc., to get started. And then you're going to be able to run that property and use the money that you make with the Airbnb to pay those bills and utilities, and then you keep the profit after that. So that's fairly simple, you guys. 2K is easy to get started with. When I had my first property, I actually signed 4 at the same time, so it cost a lot more to get started. And I was sort of at around the 2K I had different properties. I had a studio, a 1 bed, and 2 3 beds. So they varied in price. But the studio itself would have been around 2K to get started. And that was in Florida. Now, I'm thinking back, this was 2 years ago now. And so property was a little bit cheaper at that time. You know, your rent, it just completely depends on what state and what city you're in. But yeah, I think if you're in, you know, one of the sort of the medium-sized cities and you get a little studio apartment, make sure it's a nice part of town, 2K is going to see you through, no problem. But that's bare minimum, I'm saying, guys. You want to have more money to invest to start with, ideally, even just to save you out of any holes you might dig yourself into. Okay. A quick lesson actually I want to touch on for how I started 2 years ago now with the 4 properties. 2 of those properties were kind of side by side. They were on the same plot, but they were 2 separated properties. And I signed the leases on both of those at once, and then 2 other properties in a completely different city. So a different neighborhood, different city. So the 2 properties that I signed with were in Tampa, Florida, guys, just to be transparent. But it was in an area that wasn't really the nicest neighborhood, just to put it that way. And the neighbor next door was actually a drug dealer. So that was something that immediately came up and caused issues with guests. You know, they were smelling, you know, heavy smells of drugs coming from next door. Then the second property attached to that sort of was a little bit away from that other neighbor, but we had other issues because we had people coming into this neighborhood for this Airbnb, the main one, and they were throwing parties and they were causing disruptions, which upset the other guests who were also in the property adjacent that we were renting, and just caused, guys, all kinds of problems. 1-star reviews, cancelled bookings, these types of things, which really don't leave you in a good stead with Airbnb. And you want to have your profile as optimized as possible. You need to have an average of 4.8 stars on your reviews, which is actually extremely hard to maintain. And you know, if you're not running a real tight ship, and touch wood, I haven't missed a Superhost yet since my first quarter, because they run the Superhost qualifying every quarter. So I've never missed a Superhost status. But I had to cut these properties off, you guys. It was just as a year was expiring on these, and I was able to get my deposit back, obviously, because we take good care of the properties, but we had to wipe our hands of them, walk away from them. They were not ideal, to say the least. But there's a lesson learned there, you guys. Yes, we did invest some money, and yes, we didn't make as much as we could have if it was in sort of a better neighborhood and we had been a bit more specific with what we chose, but that was the lesson we learned. Now, if you're starting with nothing and you end up with a property like this, it is going to completely end you. You will never do Airbnb arbitrage again. You won't take the risk. You will just be completely soured with it, and you'll probably lose money. So, guys, I hope you learned something today. You know, take everything that I've said, apply it to yourself and your own circumstances, and just make an informed decision. And yeah, if you feel like you learned something, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next one.